Yeah, and you hit on, pretty much all of the info that we talked about, but yeah, Michigan, I think the benefit that they have is really Jim Harbaugh's his style of play that he likes to play offense with, because a run game is going to travel no matter what, right? It could be rainy, you can run the ball. It could be snowy, obviously, as everybody here knows, you can run the ball. When you get those types of, elements, inclement weather, things of that nature, it becomes difficult to be, if you are a pass heavy team or a team that really focuses on throwing the football, whereas Michigan is not that. Michigan is a team that can run the ball and they can play defense. And I think Michigan is really unique when you look at the top, let's say the top five, essentially, is that they do it better than I think any of those other teams do. I think we may have an argument, with Georgia, but I mean we've also seen Georgia struggle. They gave up what 22 to Kent State. They had a struggle for a while with Missouri. So it's not as if this is the Georgia from last year where we saw, a historic defense and we saw them just throttle everybody outside of Clemson in week one. So Michigan has to feel confident going into the back half of the season, because the run game is getting better, like you mentioned, to be able to add Donovan Edwards at this point of the season, right in the last week or two, him getting healthy, to be able to essentially add a running back now is wild, especially one of his caliber. So I would say, it's a really good spot for Michigan to be in right now. Defensively, you mentioned it. I think DJ Turner's played really well on the back end, and really multiple guys on that back end. Mike Morris, Oki, Graham, Mozzie Smith. I mean, when you start to name guys, I mean, the list gets pretty long of guys who are making plays and playing at a really high level. And I think Michigan, if they continue this style of play and just continue to build on it and be better and better, I feel a lot better about that game the Saturday of Thanksgiving, because I just think, like I said, that being able to run the ball, it does a lot of things, especially on the road, right? To be able to kind of calm down that crowd. It's a big rivalry game, so that they're going to be loud, but to be able to have sustained drives, to be able to kind of quiet the crowd a bit, keep keep that Ohio State offense off of the field, right? Keep them on the sidelines. It's probably going to be cold, so it just a lot of factors kind of come into play. But I think where Michigan is, it's a great spot, and I think, with even of the questions that we've had with JJ and the pass game, especially down the field. I mean, if we said before that first game, if we said, hey, JJ's going to have, I think he's number one in completion percentage, if not top three in the country. At this point, I think we would both be extremely happy with that. So, and that's where we're at. So it's a great spot to be in.
It absolutely is. And, for the most part, JJ has done what he's been asked to do, right? I think a lot of our gripes, Desmond, it's not really with him more than it is the philosophy at times, offensively.
Hmm.
And we just feel that there are aspects of this kid's game, particularly his arm strength, that they could take advantage of more, right? And granted, when he has his opportunities, he has overshot some guys, and but then lies the conundrum, because what I believe, I think you agree with this as well, that that's more of a rep issue than an ability issue,
Correct.
right? And how can you work on that if you're not doing it very often? So, but on the flip side, their running game has been so dominant, and their offensive line play. We can't just glorify Dalvin Evans and Blake Corum. Believe me, they deserve it. But what this offensive line has done has been incredible. I mean, it's rare where you have an offensive line that has the right mentality in terms of being maulers and chemistry, uh, to know exactly what they're doing. Guys are doing their jobs, they're picking up their blocks, and Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum are having the vision and patience to manipulate the second level of defenders and then take advantage, and then let their natural athletic ability allow them to gash a play. So it's the perfect combination. And you mentioned Ohio State. What I would say about both teams and what's going to make it so compelling of a matchup once we get to that last Saturday in November is you have Ohio State at right now clicking at what they do best offensively, which is slinging the ball across around the field. And then you have Michigan clicking on all cylinders and what they do best, which is running the football. And the way Michigan's running, you would think conventional wisdom is that, man, you can't score and be as explosive with running the football like you can passing the football like Ohio State. Well, if the way that Michigan ran the ball versus Penn State, they were just as explosive as any passing game. They ran for plus 400 yards,
Correct.
and they had huge explosive plays for touchdowns. 50-yard runs, 60-yard runs, etc. Well, I mean, look, if you can do that, then it doesn't really matter. And I don't think to do that versus a team like Penn State, that was the 5th ranked rushing defense in the country. That tells me, one, that you're getting better, and that you can do it against the best, or some of the best, right? And this happens all the time. Once there's a primetime matchup and the final score is a pretty big disparity, then people automatically assume, well, okay, maybe the other team was a little overrated. Well, maybe so, but you know what? There's a reason why they were rated there in the first place. They were
Correct.
doing certain things well. They were handling their business up to that point. So we're not going to totally discredit that team just because they had a bad day at the office and they got beat pretty good. Sometimes that happens, right? It doesn't mean that they go from being a really good team to, oh, they're crap. No, Penn State's a solid team, but Michigan showed where they really are, which is you're not on a level, right? And you continue to move forward. So, man, it's very, very interesting. And also, look, one thing I also was worried about, and the reason why we talk about Ohio State is, quite frankly, that's the next big game on the schedule. You can argue Illinois. I think that's kind of dangerous. I think that might be the week before Ohio State. You can't overlook them. You want to make sure that we've seen Ohio State almost get beat by Maryland the week before the Michigan game. So you can never get too high on yourself. But for the most part, Ohio State is the final and actual real next test. And
Final boss.
the final boss, if you will, right? And I don't know, man. It's Michigan seems pretty. All you can ask for is whatever you do well as a team, be consistent with it, and be clicking on all cylinders. And Michigan's doing that right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.